I guess with that, for our first, I guess, topic for this week, then we'll start with something a little bit light, and that is Square Enix has decided to cancel their Go series on mobile. So the Go series, for those of you who don't know, is basically mobile or kind of premium versions of their various properties. They did Hitman Go, Tomb Raider Go. Did they do a third one, Rob? Would you know?
I don't know offhand. Sorry.
Hmm. But
Let's look it up. Got my little phone here.
while Rob is doing that, while the series has earned some critical acclaim, especially Hitman Go, which we looked at, I believe, 2 weeks ago, it hasn't been bringing in the numbers, sadly. And again, it's one of those very interesting cases of trying to, I guess, do higher quality games on mobile, and it's just not paying off for people.
Yeah, it really it's a tough market. It's really a tough market. And I'm just looking it up. I know they've got a lot of the Final Fantasies on there. Certainly, it's not part of the Go series. There's the Go trilogy. Deus Ex is the third one.
Really? Oh yeah. I didn't know they made a Deus Ex Go.
Yeah, I didn't either. It's interesting. This is really interesting. I mean, the fact is, like, the reason they got out of it is very understandable. It's business decision. And these Final Fantasy games, for Final Fantasy VI, it's $15.
Mm.
Final Fantasy VII is $16.
Damn. How much is Deus Ex Go, by the way, while you're looking that up?
Well, they have the Go trilogy, and that was
Okay.
five bucks.
Mm.
So, like, I'm looking at these Final Fantasy ones. I'm like, what the? Why are they three times as much as this bundle of three games?
Mm-mm-mm.
Or is it that they're each $5? No, you can get. I feel like you can buy $5. You get all of them right now.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's the same thing, Daniel. And that's what they were saying on the Gamasutra piece. That it doesn't matter how critically acclaimed the things are, if people aren't going to spend money. And again, it's that perception. I think we need to have another discussion about this at some point. That perception of free to play versus a premium game. Because obviously, people who play the free to play titles, at least the ones who get hooked, are spending way more than $5, $10 on a single game. But it's that perception of how they're spending the money that I think is different.
Well, I mean, there's the problem with that is that there really aren't that many more people. It's just the people who are spending money spend a lot, and then there's most people who don't spend a dime. They just play. Like, sadly, I do that. Every once in a while, I'll spend $2 if a special comes up, but, like, for the most part, I'm not spending any money, and I'm playing these games very casually all the time, when I have some downtime. But, like,
Yeah.
the mobile market, as is we've gone over before, is brutal, and yeah, exactly the exact problem is that free to play games are getting way more and more polished and more rounded experiences.
Yep. And again, I'm looking at the Deus Ex page on the iTunes store, and it's got editor's choice. It's got 4 out of 5 stars on average. So you would think that it would be a really great game, but here's the kind of the point. I never saw that promoted on Google Play. I'm sure it's not being promoted on iTunes either.
No.
And again, it's one of those cases where, and it's the same thing with the independent space, that once it goes off that front page, it might as well not even be out anymore. It doesn't exist for a lot of people.
Yeah, and certainly you can go to each individual, like, subgenre page, but even then you're not going to run into it unless it's popular. And the fact is, you get this weird crossover audience. Like, certainly people who are much younger might own a console and a mobile phone, and maybe play less on PC. But if you're a PC gamer, why would you buy Deus Ex on the phone? Like, you can go buy it on Steam and just have the original experience as it was meant to be, as opposed to an experience that kind of forces you to play in a touchscreen kind of scenario.
Yeah.
But, like, that's the choice. I would much rather play on a PC. I mean, I have a great phone, but I use my phone when I am not in front of a PC. Like, if I'm not in front of my computer, then yeah, I'll play games on my phone. But if I'm here, why would I touch my phone ever? Certainly for a sit-down long-term experience, I don't like those on a phone. They
Yeah.
they aren't conducive to the mobile experience for me.
Mm-hmm. And again, with the pricing of the game as well, like as you said a few minutes ago, Rob, why should I spend $5 on just one game when I can play who knows how many different knockoffs and other titles for free?
Oh yeah, like what I would do is I just go through the store every month or two and just download a whole bunch of games that look interesting to me. Then over time, I'll play one, get bored with it, go to the next one, play it, get bored with it, and go on to the next one. And it's very disposable. They're just basically disposable games, for lack
Yeah.
of a better term, that are free.
Yeah. And it's kind of that weird issue that games like the Go series, Monument Valley, and so on are high quality games on the mobile side. But again, it's like that. It's kind of like you're damning it with faint praise, because even the highest quality mobile game can still pale in comparison to even, like a second or third tier indie game. And I mean, and that's one of those weird things, because you will see people when you put a game on Steam who will say, this was like a mobile game, or, these controls suck, it must be mobile.
Yeah.
Or, oh, this was poor for mobile, don't bother playing it.
Yeah, and I've done that before. I've bought a game on Steam that looked interesting, only to find out exactly that. Oh, it was a mobile experience, and that's why it's a little, hobbled.
Hmm.
One thing I will say is that I did buy on both PC and mobile. I bought Sword and Sorcery.
Hmm.
Sorcery, is that how you pronounce it? And I bought. I didn't buy it on the PC, but Monument Valley was another one of those. There's a few games that I've bought that are just very intriguing, very well received, and uh, those are the games that I'll purchase outright. But yeah, most of them no.
Hmm. And hey, Viking, thanks for coming on. But with the topic at hand, yeah, and that's kind of Nintendo ran this exact same problem with Super Mario Runner or Super Mario Run. I think Animal Crossing's doing okay, but again, it's that issue of mobile for a lot of people, at least for core gamers, is viewed as the redhead stepchild. It's the lesser of the experiences, and it doesn't matter how much you put into the game if the market is just basically completely against you. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just going to say, like what you were saying earlier with Square Enix with Final Fantasy, I know The World Ends With You has a mobile version as well. And again, like you asking $15 for a mobile game, it just seems crazy.
Oh, it's nuts. And I mean, the big problem is the old Final Fantasy games. I mean, I enjoyed the ones that I played were kind of the core that a lot of people played in the late '90s with 7, 8, 9. Those are the ones that I played and I enjoyed. And they all had great overall experiences that included audio. In a mobile game, you might as well throw out the audio for as many people that actually use it.
Oh yeah.
It's not to say it won't be great, and it's not to say a lot of people don't actually listen to the music, but the experience being so small and handheld, I mean, if you like a handheld console game, well, you own a DS, and you might own, well, I don't know if the Vio or whatever what was the Sony version called?
Vive. No,
Well, the Vive.
PSP Vive, I think it was, or
Okay,
PS.
yeah.
Yeah.
Vio is a completely different thing, but um,
Oh wait. Vita. I'm sorry. Vive is the VR.
oh, gotcha. See, look at Sony confusing us all with their V words.
Hmm.
There you go, Viking. That's a good quote. I like it. Mobile users don't play games; they kill time. I think that is appropriate, but it's true that if you want a video gaming experience and you want it mobile, well, there's outlets for that, and they give you good experiences, video game experiences that are meant for that particular, like a DS. You got all kinds of games that really utilize the interface well.
Hmm.
For the iPhone, you know,
And
the
I was just about to say, and what about the Nintendo Switch now? I mean, it's literally
yeah,
a
the
portable
Switch.
console.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you really can't get any much more in terms of portable and power than the Nintendo Switch.
Right.
And speaking of, as a very interesting reveal, somebody leaked that they may be bringing Fortnite to the Nintendo Switch.
Oh,
And
jeez.
that is going to be freaking huge when you think about it. I mean, the Switch is already portable, and now you can say, here's a console, you can get a console experience with Fortnite anywhere you are. I mean,
Yeah.
it's going to be crazy.
I mean, it is very powerful. Now, one of the problems that I've seen with Switch is that, and this has been Nintendo like all over the entire history of Nintendo, is that it's always been technologically behind the other consoles and computer systems. And so when you try to do a port, there's oftentimes a lot of cut corners.
Yeah.
And one of the things I know is that when you take a multiplayer experience for a PS4 or Xbox online game and transfer it to Nintendo, the audience automatically is cut into a fraction. Now, Fortnite is universal, and I imagine it'll be appealing to a lot of people, but I'm still not sold on its longevity.
And we had a whole discussion about that last week, which you guys can watch record as well. Okay, so Viking saying it's just the Fortnite, the Viking, or I'm sorry, the zombie version of Fortnite, not the Battle Royale. But I am very sure that if Epic can get it to work, they're going to try and release the Battle Royale version on the Switch, because it just sounds too much like a match made in heaven there.
Yeah, it is, and I mean it is. It's a popular game, and it's while it appeals to a variety of audience types from like casual to hardcore, and it can be an easygoing mobile experience.
Now, speaking about mobile, there's one thing that I want to bring up. So we talked about this one before. When people bring up how much money the mobile market is making and why you should keep supporting it, it's the same thing we talked about when it comes to Fortnite and even to the MMO market. That, again, the games that are popular, they're not really bringing in fans to a genre. They're just bringing those respective people. The people who play Clash Royale aren't the ones who are going to be spending millions of dollars on South Park Foam Destroyer, or the ones who are playing Candy Crush, and so on and so forth. And it's a very dangerous mindset, as we talked about last week, to say that, Fortnite is making lots of money, so that must mean Battle Royale is very big. If World of Warcraft is huge, surely that means we should all make MMOs.
Yeah, this bubble's about to burst for, not necessarily Battle Royale, but I feel like esports in general. It's about to burst, and it's going to kill an awful lot of projects. An awful lot.
Well, we need Josh on here. I think we may have summoned him by saying that.
Yes, exactly.
I know they released the Street Fighter collection this past week. People have been talking about that, like 30 years of Street Fighter games, all of which I would be horrible at playing.
Yeah, there was once upon a time where I was average, but now I'm terrible. So I enjoy watching people play Street Fighter, but I don't know if I have the time to get good enough to even play a solo experience.
No, speaking about getting good, I did beat Dark Souls earlier this week. I went through it again on Remastered.
You gonna be doing the speedruns now?
Oh, exactly. I'm sure I can beat it in 20 minutes. I'm sure I can get myself down to that point.
That'd be shocking if you could get down to 20 minutes. Just kind of play a whole video and then edit out the middle several hours.
Exactly. Nobody needs to know. They'll just see my character, like, the health bar will be like here, and they'll be here. It just happened. I don't know what it did.
Yeah, you'll be like, oh gosh, why can't I pull up the guy's name right now from Twin Galaxies, the guy who was cheating this whole time?
Billy Mitchell.
Billy Mitchell. You can be the new Billy Mitchell.
Oh, that would be good. Let's start spreading that rumor around, Rob. Josh Bycer, Game Wisdom's the new Billy Mitchell. There we go.
Well, I mean, you didn't go on to a award-winning documentary claiming to be the best at a game, so
that's what I need to do. I need to start. I am the. I can't even think of a game I could say at this point. I'm the. I don't know. Let you folks figure that one out. Oh yeah, that's a good one, King. I think we'll talk about that one in a few minutes. But getting back to Viking's point, MMO community is a bit starved. That's a very interesting one. I know I spoke to Ramin again, a game economist, a few times. We talked about kind of the MMO experience being a lot less interesting, at least now. Like we were talking about kind of the golden age being late 90s, early thousands. We're trying to build that like the community up and going for that community created content or user generated content. And yeah, we really haven't seen too many MMOs, at least in that sense of going for that long term. I mean, obviously games like Destiny 2, Guild Wars 2, even that Conan Exiles games
Yeah.
are out there, but we've yet to see someone either try and go after World of Warcraft or try to do like that massive experience. And we've kind of seen that kind of being taken, with the open survival genre, games like Rust, Ark, you name it, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and you got to throw Path of Exile in there
Oh
too. Now, like I don't know how you like we just talked about that part for mobile. Just if you're in the Clash of Clans area, like for World of Warcraft, there are people now who have invested tens of thousands of hours into that game. Like tens of thousands. That's crazy, right? And how do you get that person to give up all that invested time?
You're not.
And try something new. Exactly.
You're just not.
And because MMOs are, they've been around. There's tons that are just around, just kind of floating, and they have their own popularity. But you're not gonna. I don't know if there's ever going to be another World of Warcraft, except maybe in a VR type space.
Yeah, and it's just one of those, again, MMOs, and especially World of Warcraft. There we go. It's again one of those things where a lot of people felt that it was going to be the next big thing, but it really turned out to be more or less an oddity of the market. And I think the same thing goes for Fortnite, the same thing goes for Clash of Clans and Candy Crush and so on. That, again, if you spend over, I forget, what's that number of hours they say you need to spend to become an expert at something? It's like 800 hours.
10,000.
Well, I was really close there. But, and as Chris was saying about spending 6,000 hours on Ark there, once you get to that level of investment, you're not really going to switch to another game. This is why, this is the whole point of the whale-driven model for mobile. They want to get you hooked so that you're going to just keep putting money into that one game. But again, you can't say that the mobile market is bringing in all these millions of dollars. The same goes for Battle Royale if people are just spending it on one title. And I think this is, the big point about the difference between these markets and what we've spoken about with several independent developers, is that the great thing about being an indie is the fact that there is that sense of camaraderie and the fact that they're not in direct competition, at least not for the most part. Again, who was I? Oh yeah, I just spoke with Shane Neville, who did Bunker Punks, and we talked about how his original version for the game was very similar to Nuclear Throne, but he decided to change it so he wasn't stepping on their toes. And that's kind of the beauty of it, is that I can buy 10 different indie games and have 10 completely different experiences. Going back to Cultist Simulator, there's not another game like Cultist Simulator right now on the market. And even games that do try and occupy a similar genre, they will still be different. There's a big difference between playing something like Racketeer and playing Moonlighter that was released this past week.
Well, I also got to say that when you're talking about the mobile, and I'm going to try and find the actual numbers here. I know Apple made them available very easily, but now it's harder to find the top earning games. Let's see if I can find it somewhere. God, it used to be. But like basically, you look at the top 20, and 15 of them are probably going to be gambling apps. Not like real live money gambling, but like fake money, fake slot machines. You usually have at the top your Clash of Clans, whatever. Like Dragon Age was there for a little while. Clash of Clans is a like perennial. But like you'll have those couple of games that are popular, and have that dedicated following that spends money, and then you're going to have a couple of titles like Netflix and HBO, and what's another one would be like the MLB baseball experience. That thing is usually high during the baseball season. But then you have gambling apps, like half of them are going to be that, and you can't compare that. Like there are very few people who are going to be your core gamers who will play a Deus Ex and your gambling app fans. Just had slot machines to League of Legends. Perfect. Yeah, there you go. Good
And as
point.
Viking said a few minutes ago regarding the MMO space, the development is a beast. I mean, you can't make a simple MMO. Like, you're not spending 4 to 6 months and maybe like $100,000 to make an MMO. It
Right.
takes years of development. I can't even imagine how much money it costs to not only make it but to maintain it. And
Yeah.
again, with the MMO market, if you're not making an income very early in, you're kind of done. And
Well,
go ahead.
I just want to say on that, like, regardless of when you start making the money, you have to go in with a long-term investment plan. Like, you have
Mm-hmm.
to say, okay, well, in 5 years, this is what we want to have accomplished, and these are the numbers. Like, you have to have an exit strategy and a strategy to keep going. Like, you got to
Mm-hmm.
give yourself a deadline. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like you say, 6 months. You can't just say, oh, if we're not profitable in 6 months, but you can
Mm-hmm.
say if we're profitable or near that in 3 years, then we can keep going. In 5 years, we want to
Mm-hmm.
have like this scale. But yeah, if you don't go into it with that kind of mentality of a AAA studio long term plan, like
Mm-hmm.
willing to spend tens of millions of dollars just to get your foot in the door, then yeah, you're done already.
Yeah. And that's a really big point there, Rob. What publisher today is going to agree to a game where we don't know we're going to be making money, but we're going to play in the next 3 to 5 years after release to see what happens?
Well, esports right now
Yeah.
that's where that's coming in. Oh boy. Okay.
But
Well, sorry, my laptop battery may not last the whole time. We'll see.
uh
We'll see how it goes.
but with something like esports and even something like battle royale, that's kind of the hot ticket right now. But even games like Destiny are suffering, and this is why we see so many developers, at least at AAA, going for iterations and those yearly releases. I mean, we just heard there's going to be a new Assassin's Creed game announced. We're going to probably get a new Call of Duty, or we've already gotten that announcement. So it becomes far less riskier to say develop a game for a year, year and a half, release it, versus saying we're going to develop a game for the next 6 to 7 years, and let's hope we make the money at that point.
Yeah, and only the biggest of companies can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I said this last week, I think, and I can only reference the projects I'm working on. But the NBA 2K League is one of those where the NBA and 2K have decided they're going to invest in this for many, many years
Mm-hmm.
without thinking of earnings and that kind of thing. They're
Mm-hmm.
dedicated to doing this long term, which is that recipe for eventually, like, if you really want to be successful in a game like this, you have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're not successful, you just have to be willing to make that commitment.
Yep.
Or yeah, Chris, I wish I had that skill, convincing investors. I feel like
I could use that too.
yeah, I think we could all use that because there's so many people who are able to convince investors on products that are very obviously terrible ideas. Same with Kickstarters. Some people are just so good at that, and it can be a shame sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And I guess with that, another topic that came up, Jump brought this up a few minutes ago, is about the game Agony. This was where my piece about AO rated games came from the other day. And with Agony, the game was designed or pitched as an adult only experience, very, very graphic imagery and stuff like that. And after they got a publisher, they decided to tone it down. And it's got a lot of people annoyed because they originally promised the game to be this AO experience. And it's a very tricky point. And for those of you watching this, the video is up on the YouTube channel. But I guess for you, Rob, as someone who does game producing, like, what do you think about the AO rating?
Now you have to tell me. Like we touched on this a little while ago, right? I don't know much about Agony, I'm afraid.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'm fine. Like ratings, I'm not the biggest fan of. We talked about this a
Mm-hmm.
couple of weeks ago. I mean, great, yeah. Throw in more ratings to be more descriptive. That's fine. Yeah, I don't know. It's really tough for me to weigh in on that because my opinions on ratings in general are a little skewed.
Mm-hmm. And and again, like with the AO rating, it just seems like a catch 22 because you're not going to be able to buy an AO game in a store. So your really only option is to go the independent scene or go digital for it.
Yeah, I mean, you're already limiting your audience. You're already limiting it. So, um, It's just like the in movies you have the X rating. That's never going to get into a theater. You may have the most awesomest movie ever. Like you could, like Clockwork Orange, for example.
Hmm.
That had an X rating initially, but like you are going into it knowing that you're limiting your audience, and that's why R movies and PG-13 movies are always competing against each other because the broadness of the audience is really within those two lines.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's a studio decision, and like as a game developer, as you know, somewhat like as a game designer, I can imagine you want to stay true to your art form, and if that art form is just tons of nudity and sexual scenarios and violence and blood and gore, like then I guess good for you, that's what you want to stick to. But don't be surprised when a producer who gives you money or a publisher who gives you money wants to change that a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think with the adult game rating, like when you look on Wikipedia for the games that have gotten that, they're all essentially porn or some kind of sexual game. Grand Theft Auto was on there after the hot coffee debate, and of course, Hatred being
Yeah.
extreme violence. But the question remains, like, what is really considered an adult game at this point in terms of if we don't count violence and sex? I mean, all the stories that we've told, especially those around, uh, fatherhood, adulthood, LGBT issues, stuff like that, they typically are either non-rated or because there's 9 in graphic in them, they're usually like T to E or stuff like that. And it just seems like a very weird case of, what really makes something adults only? Like, what is considered a mature story for the game industry?
Yeah, like I mean, when you look at the history of these violent games, like Grand Theft Auto,
Mm-hmm.
God of War. I mean, there's a million other examples. Mortal Kombat being an interesting one because that was publicly available in arcades, and hyper violent for the time. Um, but yeah, I mean, games have had a weird kind of relationship with this rating system, and it's probably really tough for someone to rate because,
Mm-hmm.
like you say, with hot coffee, that whole thing, like that's not on the box.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was made available like through the grapevine and finally be kind of surfaced.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was the same with Mortal Kombat. Like it was violent enough, but if you knew the combinations, you could get to the brutalities and stuff like that, which has made even more violence.
Yep.
Um, it's a tough one. Like you have to dig to sometimes find all the gore and pornographic situations that might warrant it. So it depends how hard you're willing to dig, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
to find that and make that rating based on it.
Yep. And again, like it's one of those very weird things because the industry moves so fast. I mean, again, stuff like The Last of Us, God of War, and all that, that wasn't happening 15, 20 years ago. And now we're getting these very interesting, very mature stories. I mean, that Hellblade Setsuna Sacrifice that deals with mental illness and stuff along those lines. Like, that's in a game that I think was rated M. But like, wouldn't stories like that be considered for adults? Like, it's one of those very weird things. Like, every region again has its own standards for what it's considered to be adults only and what's not. For instance, Australia recently denied classification for We Happy Few due to its use of drugs. We know that Germany, for instance, is very much against any kind of violence and stuff like that. China famously removed like the undead or had to be reclassified for World of Warcraft because they didn't want anything to show, that kind of stuff along those lines. So it's just very hard, I think, to really know what is for a mature audience.
Yeah, it is. It's very difficult. It's always been a fine line. Just like for movie ratings, like the group that decides on the rating it's almost just subjective at a certain point, and certainly games has that note that Viking put up about Steam. That's an interesting change, and I think it's
Mm-hmm.
a good change
Mm-hmm.
to just default everything to mature and uh, unless otherwise specified.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, you can just there's no ratings required on Steam,
Mm-hmm.
and with good reason. Why would they cut into their own profits for that?
Yep. And again, as you just said, Rob, there is a much greater market for PG or E games versus, adults only or M rated. That's the nature of the industry, or the nature of any kind of entertainment industry. When you start segmenting your audience, you're not going to make as much money. It's
Hmm.
why games that have mass appeal usually earn the most money.
Right. And to Chris's point, yeah,
Me too.
Steam's always asking me my birthday as well, which turns out to be January 1st, 1943, or something along those
Hmm.
lines, or 1922, or 1971.
You look good for
Like
your age, Rob.
always January 1st for some reason. That's everyone's birthday,
Hmm.
according to.
Hmm. I think I did one that was like 1878 or something like that at one point.
That's funny.
Yeah. And again, like, why would a developer set their game to be adults only if they had the choice?
Hmm.
You just
Well,
don't know.
it does have a weird draw, like it was mentioned earlier.
Hmm.
It attracts the attention of teenagers who are a little more interested in the risque than a lot of other age groups.
Hmm.